I'm not seeing the shift happen as quickly as, I think we all imagine it would be, especially when people tout that AI will be replacing developers. But I am,
Well, we all know that's not true.
yeah, I am seeing the shift in people starting to think about the internal team and their capability and their capacity and even their skill set, and saying for 2-3 months, why can't I just hire for the skill set that I need, build the tool, train my team on it that I already have, and then let us run them out.
Welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology.
This is Darren Pulsford, Chief Solution Architect, author, and most importantly, your host. On this episode, Unlocking AI's Potential in Business, with special guest Andrew Amann, CEO of 923 Studio.
Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Hey, it's been a while since we've talked. In fact, we were like, what were we going to talk about today? It's been such a long time. But you reminded me of some really cool things that we're going to talk about around Gen AI and operations and process improvement, all that stuff. But before we get there, everyone that listens to my show knows that I don't have anyone on my show that's not a superhero. Every superhero has a background story. What's your background story, Andrew?
So I graduated college in 2008, and I started working in nuclear submarines. So for the first 6 years of my career, I was running around nuclear submarines, the Ohio class, the Los Angeles class, and also the Seawolf class, and helping build out the hovering pump. And on top of that, designing the future of how submarines are going to load and unload payloads. So between that process and between building that, I've learned a lot in supply chain. I've learned a lot about throughput. I learned how to work inside of a government contract. But most importantly, I learned how to innovate. And while building there, I created 3 patents for the United States. It's basically tracking parts inside of a nuclear facility. And it's a Bluetooth chip that we put all around the manufacturing shop. And it tracks parts as large as cars as they navigate through a manufacturing process. Those 3 patents are still inoperable today. I went
That's
around.
awesome.
Yeah, I went to France, installed them there. The UK has a few. And then here in Massachusetts, we have a shop that's running that Wi-Fi Bluetooth tracking system.
You know, we should absolutely do that for our shipyards here in the United States. You've been in shipyards.
Yes.
Our nuclear shipyards for our submarines are first class, but our other ones, I've toured shipyards. I'm like, oh my goodness. They said their biggest problem is misplacing parts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's actually nuclear submarine shipyards are not that much different than the ones you've seen.
Great.
You can't get into as a civilian, so you just don't see what's behind the scenes. It's shocking to me because even as we built out this technology, we also tried to roll it out to civilian type places like car manufacturers.
Right, yeah.
And I remember I went to Boston, which on the Tobin Bridge, if you've ever driven over Boston, on the left and right, there's hundreds and maybe tens of thousands of cars that have been dropped off from the boats to be dispersed across the dealerships across Massachusetts. And so I went to them, and there's a company there. I think it's called Falcon 7, if I remember correctly. And they're responsible for taking it off the ship and putting it in the lot. And at that time, the keys aren't programmed for the car yet. So you can't just press the key button. And
you can't press the button.
Which I thought was, what they did. But they said we lose 10 to 15 cars a month. And I'm like, that's $100,000 times 15. That's a lot of money. This would be a great solution for you. And they're like, oh, no, insurance covers it. We're pretty good with it. And then we end up finding them anyways and just call the insurance company and letting them know. I'm like, what? How is this not?
Well, I had a similar experience. I was in a shipyard in Pescaloosa, Mississippi. You know where that's at?
Yeah, I do. Actually.
Yeah. And so I was visiting one of the shipyards down there, and we were talking about the problems that they were having. Yeah, we missed parts. And I thought they meant like bolts. No, they're talking like whole galleys.
Yeah.
I said, a whole galley, a whole kitchen? You misplaced a kitchen? Oh, yeah, we misplaced a kitchen.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy cow. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's exactly what the invention was for. And the parts that we first put them on were main steam isolation valves, which is the main part of a nuclear reactor. So when it fails or when it's passing water through, it is the most responsible thing to keep the uranium separate from the clean water. And so that thing is the size of a truck, like a pickup truck. And we'd misplace them all the time. And where are they? And you're pushing them across the floor and you're like, it doesn't fit here. Let me go put it in a corner. And it looks like every other one. So you're just looking at metal, trying to figure out what the name tag says. Yeah, it's a known problem.
Well, so that's interesting. How do you apply that work that you did in supply chain and all that stuff, how do you apply that to outside of shipyards? Because
Yeah.
that's a very unique place, right? I mean, people don't normally walk around losing cars or parts the size of buildings.
Yeah.
How do you apply that to other government agencies or other enterprises that don't have that kind of supply chain? What did you learn from
Yeah,
that?
so I run an AI agency right now. We're a software agency that builds products for companies like Consumer Reports and Experian, and some of the largest brands in America. And we're helping them with their AI innovation and AI adoption to what basically is coming for the next 10, 15 years. And so we're changing businesses from the fundamental level of how they used to do business in the past and how they can move quicker and faster with less people. And we're not firing people, we're just doing more with the people they have. And so with that, I was actually talking to an EOS implementer who was complaining about the processes of EOS, which is this system that Gino Wickman has created to put into businesses to make them more efficient. And we were going back and forth on the idea of how EOS is too cookie cutter for every business. And I was saying how EOS is great if you have the right implementer. And what I was trying to explain is because I have a supply chain background, I understand the need of throughput and also the restrictions and constraints that can be put on a specific part of an organization. In our
Right.
organization right now, our biggest constraint is in HR. We're not able to hire fast enough to support the sales cycle. But that is the same exact process as if you were building a manufacturing shop for widgets and you had an assembly instructions to put
Yeah,
together
theory of constraints, right?
and theory of constraints. And
Yeah.
it's Goldrat's book, right? Of trying to figure out how to get to the goal. And the goal is to make money, which is, the theory of constraints. And so going back to our problem is you have an assembly and you have all these parts that are being shipped to your facility. And if you have that coming in as the quickest part of your manufacturing process, you can then slowly output until you hit your intended revenue numbers. But if you have a certain point, usually for most people, it's operations that is bottlenecking the rest of the organization. If
Right.
you relieve that, well, you all of a sudden need to increase HR to hire more, quicker, faster to improve the throughput of the entire supply chain. And so understanding that from a fundamental level, I never realized it's such a hard place for others to get to. And for me, I just
Oh, it
look at
is.
business as a theory of constraints and I put my mind towards the constraint, relieve it, and then find out what else breaks.
When you help other organizations with their transition to this new world that we're in with generative AI and AI systems, what is probably the number one thing that you're seeing? Or are you seeing a common thread across all of them that they're having a hard time overcoming? Or where that constraint really is that's blocking them up from moving forward? Is there something there in the middle?
Yeah, there's two major restrictions. One is the decision to go into AI. It is so much harder in the last 2 years to sell AI platforms than it has been since we started in 2016. And it's because these
Really?
CEOs are nervous about making the wrong decision. And reading online, it seems like AI is easy. And so when we pitch that AI is going to take a little bit of time, it's going to be a little bit of work, but it's also going to take training and human capital to figure out how this all works together. They get very nervous because they're like, look at this person online that just created it in a day. And sure, that works for that customer, for that person, for that instance. But when you're rolling it out across an organization that has processes, procedures, a culture, different types of people that are working inside of there, you need to roll it out for a custom solution. And I do believe that we're heading towards a world where it's always the unbundling and bundling. You can go across every technology innovation that's come up. It's either unbundled a product or bundled a bunch of products together. Google Drive unbundled Microsoft and forced Microsoft to split up Word from its package. But then they all bundled together back and put
Yeah,
all
they
the
did.
products in what we call Office 365, and Google calls it the Google Workspace. So everything has that unbundling and bundling. SaaS was the unbundling of workflows inside of a company for individuals to succeed at their job. So marketing had their own SaaS tools, engineering had their own SaaS
Their own.
tools, and we unbundled the workflows that were caused from the very beginning of what Oracle called an ERP or what IBM would call an ERP. We unbundled that to SaaS tools. I believe AI is the rebundling of bringing SaaS tools back to the organization to a knowledge base in which every employee can use that knowledge base to achieve their job faster, more efficient, and better with a custom solution that is not used in any other company, thus bringing the IP back to the company.
So that's really interesting because a lot of studies have suggested that that have run through like ERP deployments.
Yeah.
They take twice as long as expected. They cost 3 times more as much
Yes.
because you're trying to fit the tool, a generalized tool, into a custom solution. It just takes too long.
That's right.
But with AI, what I think I'm hearing you say, with AI, I can take a bundle of tools
That's right.
and customize them almost dynamically because AI can play some fuzziness in there on the integration part.
Yes.
So now I truly can have things more customized for my business
Mm-hmm.
and my culture that I have without the super long integration times that were there before. Is that kind of the direction you think we're headed?
I do think we're heading that direction, but I also think the other important piece is IP. If you're using a SaaS tool, you're just like every other company using the SEO tool that everyone's using. You're just like every other company that's using Monday.com and their style of project management. Companies have a culture, they have a pulse, they have a reason for being. And HubSpot is the best example here because I'm from Boston. You walk into a HubSpot meeting, you and I are not going to understand what they're talking about. They use
No, we're not.
abbreviations.
Yeah.
They have a language. They have kind of a cadence of how those meetings are operating. And they're so good at communicating with these 3-letter acronyms. And it structures the HubSpot culture. Taking that and bringing that into HubSpot is one thing. And there's a great book that a news writer went into HubSpot and like obfuscated, like pretty much like pretended to be a HubSpot employee, but then wrote about all the culture that HubSpot has created. And it's a great telltale sign that like companies are eventually going to have this IP, this knowledge, this cadence that they go through. And by bringing these tools into that cadence, you're helping the employees achieve their job for the job that they've been hired to do, not to generically give them a tool to solve the problem that they asked for.
So really, that's really interesting because it's what businesses have tried to actually change their processes to fit the tools.
Yes, that's right.
And what you're saying here is the opposite. We're going to see a change in the opposite of that,
Right.
primarily because of generative AI and things like that can now be more adaptive.
That's right.
In the automation on the back end could be any tool.
Could be any tool.
Well, that makes it even more interesting because now it gives me more flexibility on which tools I want to use.
Or which custom tools you want to build for the
Custom
longevity
tools,
of your
yeah.
business.
Yeah, interesting. So that's helping me develop more IP.
Yep.
But isn't there an overhead cost of me managing and owning my own IP?
Well, that's the beauty of what we're seeing with these tools is there's a convergence of two things happening. One is it's possible to build a custom solution around where a SaaS platform used to exist. The second thing that's happening is even in our agency, we used to quote 8, 12, 16 months for the replacement of some of these products that they had. Now we can quote 2, 3 months. And if you're an executive and you're trying to do the build versus buy analogy, in 2025, it's a different conversation because the buy from an agency, have them build for us, is 2, 3, 4 months, and then they're out. So it's easier to digest cost structure to understand
than a 16 to 18 month.
Than an 18 month, where you're now thinking, maybe I should hire for this and retain the talent and keep the skill set and have an engineering team. Well, or maybe engineers should just be outsourced to agencies from here on out and built when necessary.
Boy, so you're seeing a huge shift then in back office and front office type of application development.
I'm seeing a huge shift in the thought process of it. In application wise, I'm not seeing the shift happen as quickly as I think we all imagine it would be, especially when people tout that AI will be replacing developers. But
we all know that's not true.
Yeah, I am seeing the shift in people starting to think about the internal team and their capability and their capacity and even their skill set, and saying for 2, 3 months, why can't I just hire for the skill set that I need, build the tool, train my team on it that I already have, and then let us run them out.
That's interesting. But it also can mean if I do have a well-skilled up team that I can make changes much quicker than I could before.
Hmm.
which means I can affect change more quickly from the technology side of things, more quickly than I could in the past.
Right, but the change
Um,
happens more upstream. In the past, like
yeah,
we have a great client example where they used to do SQL coding to predict different packages being sent across the country. So if you were to ship a package to Idaho, which there are people in Idaho that need packages,
yep,
and you just ship it across the country, it would take a certain amount of sequencing to figure out which truck, which route, which carrier would take that package. And when you think about that process, it's a very deep SQL like process. What is the report? What are the options? What are the reasons that you can
right,
ship?
right, right,
And
right.
then all of a sudden there's a hurricane and things change. What I think is happening is the product manager can write natural language into a prompt and say, I'm trying to figure out about this shipment across the country. How would you analyze it? What predictors should I be looking for? What problems should I be looking for? And when you think about how natural language can start writing SQL code, it starts to change things. It starts to change not just the logistics industry, it changes the trucking industry, it changes healthcare. It brings it up to the people that are in the meetings making the decisions and not playing telephone down to the developers, but typing into that natural language and getting the reports out necessary, or in the case of the writing SQL code, to generate the report from the database that already exists.
So this is really interesting because the only reason we have SQL and other abstractions like that is so that we could interact with data more effectively.
That's right.
So what you're saying now is with natural language processing, like with LLMs and SLMs, small language models,
Yes.
we will be able to interact with data at a different level than we've ever been able to act
Different
before
people will be able to interact with the same data in different ways, right?
in different ways,
Yeah.
right? So, which is really interesting because now I can do a lot of quick what if type scenarios with my data without having to worry about having a development team code that up for me and me get the answer in a week or two. I can get the answer in minutes.
That's right. Dashboarding, reports, summaries, analysis, all of that can happen in a split second.
Fascinating. So that really does wipe out a whole group of people that were doing that sort of work before. So what do we do with those people?
I I don't believe that it's a zero sum game. I think when we came up with the typewriter and then all of a sudden converted to the computer, I don't think there were many accountants that said, "Oh, I'm never going to use a computer." They learned. They learned how to put their accounting
How to adjust?
into a
Yeah.
computer system. And I don't think there's any accountants today that are doing it by hand. And it could go across the industry with any of these innovations we've come up years after years after years. They then created more jobs. We all of a sudden came with a bookkeeper, and I have someone on staff that is designed to reconcile our bookkeeping software. So we have a human reconciling every single day. And that's because somebody created that software, and the reconciliation still has to happen to confirm that the credits match the balance, the debits. And so they do that, right? And that's a human job that was created because of the accounting software that was created for the accountants. And I think,
But like you said, there is going to be a job shift for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And I think the most important job shift that we have to be aware of is humans monitoring AI. I think the Matrix has a great scene with there's a bunch of crops and there's machines picking babies from the crops. I think the reverse of that is true. Humans are going to be monitoring the fields of AI and doing that last 5%, whether it's the knowledge share, the expertise, the finish the prompt, finish the writing, finish the mathematical calculation, edit the calc. Each agent is going to have that 5% to review, to finalize, to make sure that it's right and accurate. And so there will be fields of humans checking the AI systems that are doing the work.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Linus. I already use AI quite a bit in my podcast, both this one and my newscasts that I do, and I found I can't 100% trust it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes stuff up
Yep.
sometimes, and no matter how good my prompts are, and they're pretty good prompts, I keep modifying them all the time. I have to continually increase and work with it. So I do see it as a helper for me to get my job done. It works for me. I don't work for it.
Right.
And I think that's important for us to all understand. But what you're talking about here, I want to kind of switch a little bit to, because things are moving so fast now. I can have new apps very quickly, or new insights to my data.
Hmm.
That means I can pivot much faster as a corporation.
That's right.
So is that going to cause an increase in competition? And if I'm a large organization, how do I keep up with these small, mid-sized organizations that are nimble and can move very quickly, even faster now?
Yeah, I I'm a huge believer in supply and demand for obvious reasons. I think it kind of dictates how businesses go. But if this plays out the way that I'm seeing, I think the when you have a company that can move so fast and can capitalize on the speed at which customers are requesting data, you'll have less companies inside of an industry competing against each other. Because the necessity to compete is when you're sharing profits based on different needs of the business. One might be cheaper, one might have better customer service, one might have better
Right,
technology.
right. You're differentiate. Yeah, you start having to differentiate yourself,
Right.
right?
But if you remove that differentiator because everyone's using AI to create the system that is responding to the needs of that industry, you're removing the need for good UI or the need for good customer service because everybody can provide the same optimal customer service that is speedy, fast, and accurate. Everybody can provide the same price because they're using the same AI infrastructure to build for that tool. So I think it's first to market. And I think the people that are in an industry that has heavy competition, that distribution curve where like the biggest player in the market is 3%. I think those will remain. I don't think it's easy to conquer those. But when you see a market like Salesforce and HubSpot that is split 50-50, whoever is going to move the needle the fastest into doing the AI agents that's necessary for CRM is going to gobble the other one up because only a certain number of people need CRMs and there's only a certain number of companies in the world, right? So that one seems to be that whatever competitor solves the AI problem first and the customers move to that platform, I do see industries like that needing less competition. And I can't imagine after a while anybody but HubSpot or Salesforce in the CRM space really competing if all companies are using low margins for their CRM.
Well, and for CRM, that could be very interesting. You can get someone from the side that can disrupt them very easily. Then, in like a Zoho CRM, for example.
Yeah. And we're back to the
Yeah,
unbundling and bundling, right? Maybe the CRMs
yeah.
are bundling AI together and we're all going to fall into either Salesforce or HubSpot. And then eventually it'll unbundle with AI tools specific needs
With
for,
specific needs.
yeah.
So differentiation is going to be critical
Yeah.
moving forward, because the speed element is going to be there now,
Yeah.
right? So being highly differentiated is going to be important, or coming up with a luxury brand is going to be important. Why would you want to buy Darren's widget over Andrew's widget? Well, because Darren's widget costs 5 times more and has a really cool logo on it. I
Right.
mean, the quality could be identical.
Right.
It's that luxury brand. So, are we going to see more people move to different marketing, different ways of differentiating themselves? That's what it sounds like.
I hope so, but the AI overviews are not letting that happen, right? Because when you search for a product, the AI overview is selecting one of those products for you to review or purchase. And we haven't figured out a system yet for shopping online that disperses the competition like it did with SEO and blue links. So I think we do have to figure something out where we can get back to the way that competition can, compete for that search. But right now, I don't know the answer, and I don't think anyone does because we don't know how AI overviews is going to be monetized, or we don't know how it's going to be commoditized for the individuals that are trying to compete there.
Oh, so let's talk a little bit about the consumer side of this.
Mhm.
Is when organizations start adopting more and more AI and streamlining, am I going to get better products? Am I going to, or is it just all going to become black Ford Model Ts? You know
I
what I
think
mean? Everything's going to be, generic, all the same, because the AI may optimize it for, hey, profit, or may optimize it. I mean, ultimately, we're humans. We get to control these things, right?
yeah, yeah. It there's two products that we use today that you can see the future already of, and it's Netflix and Spotify. I sit down at like my kids sit down at Netflix and they watch something right away. They just pick whatever. But for an adult, we scroll for
Yeah.
25 minutes, right? Like we can never find, and it has everything that I've ever watched in the past. It knows about me. It knows about my wife. It knows if we're together watching because the time we're together. And I'm sure it uses
Yeah.
our phones. And yet every time I sit down, I don't want the thing that they're trying to suggest to me. And we all end up watching the same Netflix shows because you can go to any, water cooler.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what's happened.
Right. And Spotify has an interesting problem as well, where every time you play a Taylor Swift song, it costs more than playing an indie music song. So if you're going to
So it
create,
pushes the indie music songs.
of course, right? Because if you're going to play, your Spotify top 6 playlist or your daily playlist, every Taylor Swift song in there, if that's what everybody's listening to, is going to cost you more. Why would you not just put an indie song in there? So, we have to trust this AI is going to help us customize us and make it more appealing for me to use the specific software. We have to remember that there's a monetization business model on their side that they are trying to figure out how to alleviate costs while still giving us some sort of value and making it feel custom. So there's a balance there. And I don't know the answer of how it's going to roll out, but I feel like Spotify and Netflix have a huge head start and they still haven't figured it out.
Well, the only thing that we can do as consumers though is to push back.
Yeah.
And say, you know what? And the best way to push back is to move our money somewhere else.
Right. But so the big crux of this is we haven't seen what it looks like to have, you called it an SML, but an SLM. But the large language model is going to appear inside of Gemini within the next month or so.
Yeah, right.
And Apple will soonly follow. That is the first time we're going to have a personalized large language model on our phone that does every search outbound, whether I'm searching on Amazon, Google, Facebook, it doesn't matter. That large language model is going to know me better than any other large language model I've used because it's going to know every request. And it's also going to know my text messages, my email, my calendar, my schedule. It is
Everything.
the new paradigm of how a consumer is going to use a phone. And once that starts occurring, it's already happening on Android for Pixel 9 users with Android 15. You're going to start seeing a shift in consumer control because now I can block and control how my data gets out for these search results. And that will change everything. I don't know what direction, but you can imagine that if we all had a personalized agent with our own weights that understood us better than others, that is like a fingerprint that all marketers are going to want to get a hold of. And how does Google monetize that? I have no idea.
So what we're going to see then is customized or personalized target marketing.
That's right. That's right.
More towards us. So maybe we'll get better products in the end, which if I look at it systemically across the whole system, that should make it more efficient, meaning I'm not wasting money on ads that are hitting the wrong target.
Yes, but then we fall back into the Spotify model. If somebody paid, and I wanted to search for a blender, and somebody paid to have Google get $20 for the blenders they sell on their Gemini platform compared to the $10 median that they get for every other blender, they're going to push me a $20 vendor whether I like it or not. And that's where the trust fails.
Yeah, that's why we need multiple platforms, right? For the competition to stay in there. That's right. It's why, this whole thing's going to be really fascinating how it all boils out when Gen AI and I think what you've kind of alluded to with all of this, Andrew, is if you're not using these tools today, you are going to perish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty clear is what it sounds like.
I think every business should have a knowledge base that is based on their IP and their cadence throughout the day. I think that is inevitable, and there should be no reason why every business is not signing that up today. Now, you could use Microsoft out-of-the-box stuff. Google Workspace has Gemini built into it now. There is no reason that you shouldn't be having procedures in your company to use that search bar to search for documents, to write emails, to write marketing material, and creating folders that are designed to prompt the machine of how to do the right things. Like that makes possible. Sense. And so every company should have that. From the personal level, though, everything you learned about prompting a year ago is completely trash, right?
Yes, I know.
And because now we're learning how to prompt it for deep research. Now we're learning how to prompt it in a way that it doesn't need to hallucinate as much. So you're not trying to force it to do chain of thought reasoning, which is what the original prompting was doing.
Right.
It's just built in. And we're going to get to the point where I just go to my personal phone and I say, order me a taxi to the airport. And because I'm logged into Uber, because it already knows that I'm near Boston, because it already knows that I probably need a snack before, it'll schedule that trip for me, pull up a car at the right time, drop me off at the sub shop, pick me back up and bring me to the airport at the right time, and remind me to get my luggage and all that stuff. Like, it will do that stuff for me because I have the control of the request, and it will dictate my path forward, and it will allow me to be more human while the machines do the work in the background.
I love the word that you said there, allows me to be more human.
Yeah.
I've heard that before from a previous guest of mine, Sam Samani, who wrote a book called The Singularity of Hope.
Okay.
And his idea is that AI is going to let us be more human.
Yes. Yeah, I
Because
believe that
it
too.
will take- yeah.
And the biggest difference that I talk when I go on stages and stuff is everything we do on the internet comes from our brain, where we have to pick up a device to interact with it and remember where the answer to the question is. If I wanted to buy a toaster, I have to remember that Amazon has my password. If I want to get a taxi, I have to remember that I use Uber, not Lyft, to purchase a taxi. If I book a hotel room, I have to remember that I use Marriott, not Hyatt. Like, the human is responsible for this repository. What AI
Right.
does is it takes away this essence of a device and it adds in the addition of time. I no longer need to make those requests because I had to think about it. It should happen autonomously, and it should happen behind the scenes, and it should happen based on my calendar, and it should happen based on my text message. If my wife says, "Hey, can you pick up the kids at 4?" I don't have to go then to the mapping system, figure out what time I have to leave, figure out the address, plug it into my phone.
No, it could tell you.
It should just know. And so it should say, "Andrew, your wife asked to pick up your son at the soccer practice. You need to leave at 4:33. Your car's charging in the garage. I just topped it off, and you should be able to get in your car and drive to this address." Everything should be pre-programmed so I can be more human in between all the other steps.
I love it. AI unleashing the humanity
Yes.
in us. That's awesome. Andrew, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate your time today, but we're out of time.
Okay.
So
this was fun.
no, this is wonderful. If people want to find out more about you and your company, where do they go to find out more?
Sure. I post on LinkedIn every day, 5 times a week, sometimes 7. So you can find me on linkedin.com/Andrew Amann, Amann. Our website is 923.co. So the letters spelled out, NINETWO. And so then those 2 places, you can get all of the content about us, about me. And I have a newsletter as well that you can find on LinkedIn. But if you want to follow along, that's the best place to do it.
Andrew, thanks again for coming on the show. This has been wonderful.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and embrace the digital revolution.